All right, so you know how much we love a good deep dive, and this one is juicy. We're digging into this article you guys sent over. It's about government secrecy around UAPs.
Yeah, this one really gets into some big questions, doesn't it? I mean, we're talking about transparency, power, what it really means to live in a democracy.
And what really struck me is the article's main point. It's
Right.
not just about UFOs, right?
Exactly. This isn't just another UFO rabbit hole.
It uses UAP secrecy as this, like, example of a much bigger kind of unsettling pattern.
Right, and the article even uses this really interesting phrase. It calls it hold on, I wrote it down. A magician's democracy.
A magician's democracy. Okay, now I'm really interested. What does that even mean?
Yeah. So basically it's saying that things aren't always as they appear, right? Like in a magic show. There's a carefully constructed illusion, something to distract you from what's really going on.
Okay, I think I see where you're going with this. So the article claims there's this illusion, this managed reality happening in our governments too.
Yeah, basically it's saying that powerful forces, and they don't necessarily say who those are shaping the information we have access to, and in doing so, they're influencing our perception of the world, of what's real and what's not.
So we're not getting the full picture.
Not even close, according to this article.
Fair.
They actually connect this back to Machiavelli, which I thought was fascinating.
Machiavelli. Wow. Going way back. Wasn't he the one who, like, wrote the book on how to be a ruthless ruler?
Yeah, the prince. And the article's point is that his ideas about information and narratives about how those are used strategically, well, they argue that's still totally relevant, even centuries later.
So suggesting that our modern governments are using, what, Machiavellian tactics to keep us in the dark?
Well, they don't come right out and say that, but they definitely hint at it with this whole idea of a managed reality.
Okay, but how does UAP secrecy fit into all of this?
They use that as their prime example.
Really?
Yeah, they argue that the level of secrecy surrounding UAPs...
Actually.
Yeah.
What was it? All that stuff about?
Oh, you mean the alleged crash retrievals?
Crash retrievals, yeah, and reverse engineering. I mean, if that's true.
Well, that's the question, isn't it?
It makes you wonder why they would go to such lengths to keep this specific topic so under wraps. What makes it so sensitive?
Right, and that's the thread the article really tries to pull. They're saying that this whole UAP thing, it gives us a glimpse into this bigger question of who really holds power in our supposed democracies.
So it's not always the people we elect.
That seems to be what they're getting at, especially when they start talking about this idea of the administrative state.
The administrative state. See, now you've lost me a little bit. I'm not totally sure I follow.
So we hear that term thrown around a lot, right? But it's worth digging into because it gets to the core of how decisions are made.
Okay, so break it down for me. What is the administrative state?
Basically, it refers to this massive network of officials and bureaucrats, the career government employees. They work within all these different agencies, Department of Defense, intelligence agencies, you name it.
Okay, so people who work for the government, but not the elected officials. More like the ones who stay in their positions no matter who's in the White House.
Exactly. They have all this specialized knowledge, years of experience, and elected officials rely on that, right, to help them make decisions.
Which makes sense in theory, right? You need experts to navigate all that complexity.
Sure, but the problem, or at least the potential problem, is that over time, as the article explains it, that reliance has shifted into something, well, more consequential. This administrative state, as they call it, it's accumulated a lot of power.
More than it should have, maybe.
Well, the article suggests that it often operates with very little oversight, even from the people we elect to represent us.
So we've got this unelected group, this administrative state, and they've got all this influence. How does that even happen? You'd think in a democracy, the people we vote for would be the ones holding the reins.
Well, and this is where the article really got me thinking, because it points out that Congress, over time, they've been giving away more and more of their authority.
Giving it away? To who?
The executive branch. And by extension, to these agencies, to this administrative state we're talking about.
Huh. Okay, so it's like they're handing over the keys, little by little.
Good analogy. It's like, imagine you're building a house,
Yeah.
right? Big project, lots of moving parts. You're probably not going to do every single thing yourself. You'd hire plumbers, electricians,
Yeah, makes sense. You rely on their expertise to get the job done.
Right. And it's the same idea here. Congress passes laws, but often those laws are pretty broad, right? They lay out the general goals. And then it's up to the agencies to actually figure out the specifics, how to implement everything, all the rules and regulations.
Okay, but how does that lead to this I don't know, concentration of power in the administrative state.
Well, because over time, as the article points out, it's those agencies, those unelected officials, who end up making a lot of decisions with real impact on our lives.
And without much accountability, maybe. I mean, if they're not elected.
Exactly. And that's the big concern, right? Less transparency because they're not directly answerable to the voters.
And they're the ones who have their hands on all the information.
Which brings us back to UAPs. Because the article really zeroes in on that as a prime example of how this whole dynamic can play out.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
Even elected officials, people we voted into office, they're allegedly kept in the dark about some pretty crucial stuff.
If they even know about it at all, right? Like, how much are they actually being told? It's kind of creepy when you think about it.
It is, and it makes you wonder what else is being kept under wraps, doesn't it? But I know you might be thinking, why does this even matter to me?
Right.
This sounds like some political science lecture.
It does feel a little removed from our everyday lives, maybe.
But here's the thing, it's not. Not really. Think about it this way. If even our elected officials aren't getting the full story, especially about something as potentially huge as UAPs, then are they really representing us effectively?
That's a good point. It's like sending someone to negotiate a deal for you, but not giving them all the information.
Exactly. How can they possibly get you the best outcome if they don't know what they're dealing with? And in this case, it's not just about one deal. It's about our whole democracy.
So what you're saying is, this lack of transparency, this lack of accountability, it undermines the whole system.
That's exactly what the article argues. It creates a system where decisions are made behind closed doors and we don't even know who's making them half the time. It's like, how do we even begin to hold people accountable when we don't know what's going on?
So given all of that,
yeah,
what can we do about it? It feels kind of overwhelming, honestly.
Yeah.
I know, right? It's easy to feel powerless in all of this. But the article doesn't just leave us there. It actually it offers some solutions, some ways we can push back against this whole magician's democracy thing.
Yeah. That's what I liked about it. It doesn't just lay out the problem. It tries to empower us to. And it all starts with, well, it sounds obvious, but knowledge is power. Yeah. We've got to understand how this power dynamic actually works, which is, I guess, what we're doing right now by digging into this article.
Right. But it's not enough to just understand it, right?
Right.
What can we actually do with this information? What are some concrete steps we can take?
Well, civic engagement is a big one. That's what the article really stresses.
Civic engagement. Okay. What does that look like in this case?
It's about not just sitting back and hoping things change. We need to make some noise about this, make it an issue. And one of the most effective ways to do that is, well, have you ever contacted your representatives about something?
Honestly, not really.
It's something most of us don't think about, right? But it actually can make a difference. The article talks about how important it is to let our elected officials know that we're paying attention, that we care about this stuff.
Right.
And we expect them to prioritize transparency, right?
Yeah, totally. Like, hey, we're on to you. We don't want to be treated like a bunch of dummies in a magic show anymore.
Exactly. We're not just a passive audience here. We deserve a government that respects our right to know what's going on, especially when it comes to something as potentially huge as UAPs, right?
Speaking of which, didn't the article mention some congressional hearings coming up on UAPs? I think they're in November.
Yep, they are. And the article points to those hearings as a big opportunity because not only will they be digging into what the government knows, but there's also this new legislation they'll be discussing, the UAPDA.
The UAPDA. Now there's another acronym. What's that stand for?
The Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena Disclosure Act. It's an amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act for the next fiscal year. And if it passes, it could force the government to finally be more upfront about UAPs.
Wow, so this UAPDA thing could be a real game changer if we can get it passed.
Potentially, yeah. And the article emphasizes that we as citizens, we can actually play a role in making that happen.
Like how do we influence something like that?
Contact your representatives. Write letters to the editor, talk to your friends and family about it, make it an election issue. It all adds up. You know, public pressure works. It might not feel like it sometimes, but it does.
So the message is, stay informed, get engaged, and don't give up.
Exactly. Because ultimately, this isn't just about UAPs. It's about reclaiming our democracy, holding our leaders accountable. We have a right to know what's being done in our name, don't we?
Couldn't have said it better myself. And for our listeners who want to dive deeper into all of this, we'll be sure to include some links in the show notes. We'll link to more information about the UAPDA, how to contact your representatives, all that good stuff.
Awesome.
Well, this has been a fascinating and kind of unnerving deep dive. But hey, That's what we're here for, right? To explore these big questions, even if they make us a little uncomfortable.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power.
Truth is out there.
Mm-hmm.
Until next time.